Welcome to the Practical Growth Podcast. I'm your host, E.B. Johnson, top writer on Medium.com, published author, and master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming. You've landed on the podcast that takes you on a journey into the heart of relationships and self-discovery. This is a must listen for those who are ready to overcome their toxic relationships and their toxic patterns. You can expect real talk, practical guidance, and raw and relatable guests that you'll be talking about for weeks. Let's get into it. And hello to all my beautiful listeners who are out there today. I hope you are doing well and that this finds you in some state of peace. And if not in some state of peace, then in some state of calm. Today, we are going to be talking about gray divorce. Gray divorce, that's right. Late stage separations. They are on the rise across America. And according to one study, they're supposed to triple by 2030. This is a crazy trend, and the stuff behind it is even crazier. So this week we are going to break down gray divorce, what it is, how it affects your life, and how you can confront a gray divorce happening unexpectedly in your relationship. But just before we get into it, I do have to remind you that the final applications are open for my signature 8-week relationship coaching program. This is the ideal program for people who are ready to work through those toxic patterns that keep bringing them back to those relationships that rip them apart. If you've got, toxic and complex family dynamics and you just want to gain more control over the way you feel and the way you interact with them, this is the program for you. This is the final time I will be offering this in 2021. Okay, you've got 90 days left. What are you going to do with it? This is your chance to make a change, but it is by application only. So make sure you head over to therealebjohnson.com, click on working with me, and you will find the application as well as the full details for the program. Spots are limited. There are only a few spots left. So I actually fell down this rabbit hole of gray divorce things a few years ago when I was doing some of my own research and dealing with family issues. And at the same time, I was also helping a friend whose parents had just announced that they were having a big divorce. And she was 27, just like me. And it was a very hard obstacle for her to kind of deal with and overcome. And I, being the child of kind of what was ultimately a very normal kind of 90s, early 2000s family breakup. I had just always grown up with separated parents. So the effects of what happens in late stage didn't even really occur to me until I was kind of facing some things with some siblings. And I realized that, they had been dealing with our parents' divorce in a totally different way than I had because they had been adults when it happened and it had affected them entirely differently. So enter the idea of the gray divorce. Okay, this is an actual concept, gray divorce. You might also have heard it referred to as silver splitting. And this refers to basically divorces in couples over the age of 50, which is something that we don't really think about, right? Because when we think of older people, especially those who are like over the age of 60, over the age of 70, we kind of imagine, the happy old couple toddling down the road together and having a happy time together. And they've been together for 50 years and they go out like the Notebook. But that's not reality. That is not reality. That's not what's going on in grandma and grandpa's house anymore. Okay. There's a study out that came out in November of 2012. It's a very, very intriguing study. And I'm going to break it down for you a little bit more in a second. But this study basically went over a decade looking at married couples, and it followed them. And the divorce rates in couples over the age of 50 were astounding. Astounding. Absolutely astounding. And the reasons behind it were even more interesting. So essentially, gray divorce is a divorce in a couple over the age of 50 who've been together for a long time. Okay, this doesn't necessarily apply if you're 60, you meet someone at 61, you're married and divorced by 62. Okay, that's something different. You got to get back in the category with the kids. This is for these long-term couples, right? Couples that have been together for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and then all of a sudden they break up. divorce. It could be mutual. In many cases, it's not. But usually one partner initiates that because of things that they are experiencing in the relationship. But it's this concept of these forever couples breaking up. And it is on the rise across America in staggering numbers that we don't even realize. This episode is all going to stem kind of around, you'll see my work on Medium, but this study, which came out in 2012 in the Journals of Gerontology, and it's fascinating, and it was called The Gray Divorce Revolution, Rising Divorce Among Middle-Aged and Older Adults, 1990 through 2010. So for a decade, this study followed these couples, and they found that the divorce rates in people aged 50 and older were way higher than what they imagined. As a matter of fact, between the years of 1990 and 2010, the divorce rates of people 50 and over doubled. And then when they looked at the year 2010, 1 in 4 divorces were in couples aged 50 and older. There were so many reasons when they looked into this. And I mean, this study goes really, really deep. I'm going to include it in the show notes. So make sure that you check those out at the end of the episode because this study is fantastic. But they realized that, there were certain demographics that really helped these divorces along. And that included the economic resources that these couples had to hand, the marital biography. There's so much at play. It was so complex. What is really intriguing about this study, though, is that basically looking at these levels, which changed to varying degrees according to the circumstances of the relationships, they were able to take their results, piece together with a few other studies like Bernardo and Muller and Ullenberg and Myers, and they were able to kind of predict that over the next kind of 30 years, this was going to be this massive, massive trend. So they actually expected gray divorces to rise, in some instances, as much as triple by 2030. Yeah, triple in gray divorces by 2030. It's a fascinating study. Again, I'm going to link it down below, so make sure you check that out. As fascinating as this study was, and as deep as it went, it doesn't necessarily give you the full picture of what goes on behind a gray divorce, though. What kind of leads to these gray divorces, why so many people are getting divorced. And also, it did not touch on the substantial fallout of gray divorce. Why are so many people making the choice to split and go their separate ways after being together for so long? It's complex, and depending on the relationship that you're referring to, it differs. Okay, there's different reasons. Everyone has different reasons, just like you have a different reason for going to the grocery store than the person in line in front of you does. Okay, you came for steak, they came for bread. There's different reasons that people do different things, and gray divorce is no different. If you really were going to break it down and try to prioritize it or kind of put it in an order, at the top of the list of reasoning here, and this was even acknowledged in the study, is these kind of societal shifts, these changes in expectations. And with that is this kind of, we recognize now that there is this need for personal happiness. There is a need for us to be happy on our own terms, truly happy, not just settling for a fake definition of happiness. And that's one of the big reasons that people are splitting in older age. Okay, they have this increased need for happiness. We understand that it's our right. We don't have to prove ourselves. We don't have to do what we're told. We just have to be happy on our own terms. It's the only way we become, pleasant to even be around, is being happy on our own terms. So that's one of the big reasons that you can find people with these shock divorces. Especially because there was different expectations, years and years and years ago. You settled, you just got married, you had the kids. It didn't matter if it wasn't perfect. You just did it and you made it work. But we know now that, that doesn't work. It doesn't actually work. That's how we end up in disastrous, heartbreaking family situations. So behind this kind of increase in divorces and splits in older age is the understanding that happiness is the key to a livable life. Being happy. It's bog standard, foundational stuff. You should be happy, and you should not be settling for relationships that don't make you happy. It doesn't matter what age you're at. Behind these breakups and splits as well is longer life expectancy. We're living longer than ever, and with that, comes the acknowledgement that we don't want to settle. We're going to be alive for 40 more years. Just because you've been with someone for 50 doesn't mean that you'll not have another 40. That is the case now. Okay? You could be together for 50 years and still be looking at another 30 or 40 years of like actually active experiences together. So there are a lot of people who kind of reach that point, that understanding, and go, wow, okay, I love you, but I can't do this with you for another 40 years. I've got 40 years left, 30 years left, 20 years left. I want to live them to the fullest. And I want to do and experience all these things that I've been stifling in myself for all these years. So this longer life expectancy is behind this push, this increase, this rise in late stage separations and divorces. In these societal shifts that we're experiencing, it's changing our expectations, but it's also changing our understanding of satisfaction and fulfillment. And a lot of people are now waking up to realize that this relationship that they found kind of stagnant is actually unfulfilling. They're not satisfied. They don't have a partner beside them. They don't have someone who supports them no matter what. They feel completely and totally alone in their relationship, or they feel disrespected, or they just don't feel validated. They don't feel seen and, valued. So this lacking in satisfaction, fulfillment, that's another reason people are separating in late stage, which is the same at any age. Honestly, you have enough. Enough is enough. And you get tired of it. And you want that ideal partnership. You want that person who's excited to see you in the mornings, who is excited to go to sleep next to you at night. And you understand that, I'm not going to wait on that anymore. I'm going to do it now while I still have at least some window of opportunity to do that. If you are one of my Medium readers, then you have probably come across my recent article on gray divorce. And you probably saw in there that we talked a lot about, personal autonomy, this individual autonomy, this increase in autonomy and understanding that we have control over the way we feel and the lives that we experience, and that we have a right to get the things that we want. And this shift toward individual autonomy is certainly a reason behind the increase in divorces, especially if you put that in terms of gender equality, right? 30, 40, 50 years ago, there were different expectations and different demands made of women. And that included getting married, having a family, and, surrendering most of the control, especially financially and materially, to your husband. That's not the case anymore. It's not the case. It's now very acceptable of women, men of any age, to go it on their own, be independent, to not have families, to not have children. It's more acceptable. We see it on TV. We have aunts and uncles that never have kids, no matter how old they get. They never get married. The eternal bachelor. It's a common trope. And that is certainly a reason why people separate. They decide to claim their happiness, claim their space, claim their true desires and what they wanted all along. And they do that actively by pursuing separations with people that they're no longer happy with. And, in my opinion, any conversation about gray divorce, we'd certainly be remiss if you didn't bring up just the natural changes that occur. Frankly, things change over time. We change as individuals. What we want for our futures changes. What we want from our partners and our relationships changes. All of that changes. And sometimes we can find that the person we wanted to be with 40 years ago is not necessarily the same person that we need to be with now. And that has certainly been something that has fed this increase in gray divorces, and this idea that I don't have to settle. We're not getting along anymore. What's the point? Let's go our separate ways and be happy with people that make us happy. If you are someone who is just in the over 50s bracket in general, or if you are someone who is going through a gray divorce, silver split yourself, then you will be very familiar probably with this next kind of drive or this cause behind gray divorce. Empty nest syndrome. That's right. Empty nest syndrome. It's a real thing. And when it happens to a couple, it can send some real ripples and shock waves through the entire relationship. Children take up a lot of space. They take up a lot of space, a lot of time, a lot of energy, emotionally, physically, materially, financially, spiritually, everything. Children, especially if you are a couple that has multiple children, it can be overwhelming. It's a lot. And it almost can put your relationship in a pause, right? You spend all your time and energy, doing the soccer practices and the band nights and the academic this and the friends sleepover nights that. And it can really kind of keep you so busy that your relationship is kind of just on autopilot. And you never really have a chance to turn and face each other and consider who you are and what you really want. But that's exactly what happens when the kids grow up and they leave the home and they go to college or they go to work or they get married, whatever it is, where you're alone in the house and it's just you and your partner, and you only have your relationship to consider, and you only have the time together and your experiences to consider. And there are a lot of couples, they could spend 30 years together, and they're all of a sudden left with kids who are very busy with their own lives, and they turn and look at each other. They get to that finish line and they are thinking, holy crap, who are you? They realize that this is not what I need. This is not what I want. This is the next chapter and I need to be self-fulfilled. And that feeds into these great divorces. Now, in that study, cheating was referred to. Cheating is just as destructive in a late, relationship, a mature relationship, as it is in an early stage relationship, if not more damaging. You've been with someone for decades and then they betray your trust. That can cause a rupture, a wound that is so big that you just really can't overcome it. It's a massive hurt. It's almost like a death. When your trust is that deeply ingrained through your relationship, when it's all of a sudden cut, it's almost like a death and you have to mourn it. And some people are different on the other side of that grief and that mourning, right? So if your partner has cheated on you, even if you've been together 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you can still make the choice to walk away because that hurt is just so big because you've put so much faith and energy into someone, and then it almost feels like it's wasted. So destruction of intimate trust, that is definitely one of the big feeding factors behind this rise, this increase in great divorces. Honestly, though, sometimes the reason behind a divorce at any stage, but especially after a long-term relationship, these late-stage divorces, the reasons can be so complex, okay? It's not really always as easy as, oh, well, Johnny left to go to college and now it's just us, or, one cheating incident, or, just growth in general. Sometimes there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of factors that create this kind of press or crush on our relationships. And that is what can cause this collapse. And sometimes they're just circumstantial, okay? No relationship at any stage is immune to stress, okay? You might all of a sudden, after 30 years together, find yourselves financially devastated, and that pressure combined with, other uncertainties or just an ill-fitting relationship in general is just too much. You push away from each other. But maybe you're like waking up and seeing that there's some abuse happening. Maybe it's financial abuse. Maybe it's physical, mental, emotional abuse. All of these little pieces, all of these kinds of aspects of our relationships can stack up to create a pressure and then a collapse that puts us on a path to late stage divorce. And believe me, if at any point any of this has sounded as though it is a matter to be taken lightly, it's not. The consequences of great divorce are far-reaching. They are complex, and they are far beyond anyone's control. Building lives together, you become closely intertwined in so many ways that you don't even realize. It's not even a matter of saying, oh, well, we're physically connected, we're emotionally connected. There are like memories and shared assets and, retirement. There's so much that gets kind of combined. You are literally like these two ancient trees that have grown together, right? You've got, your trunks might be separate, but there's all these little limbs that have become intertwined and twisted over the years. And separating, you've got to chop off the top of the tree, which can kill the entire thing, right? It's a very, very damaging thing. So it's not to be taken lightly. And anyone that's considering great divorce, you also have to consider, these kind of seriously devastating fallout pieces that come as a result. There's a lot of upset and depression that comes on the backside of that. You've been with someone for so long, and then when they're not in your life anymore, it's almost like if you imagine like it's a plane in a movie, right? And the side gets blown out of it, and there's just this giant hole, and everything gets sucked out into thin air. That is very much emotionally what it's going to feel like when you sever ties, even if the relationship was rocky, right? There's a major upset and there's major depression. And there's even been studies that have shown that the pain and depression that you experience after a late stage divorce is akin to that of those who have had spouses that died. Okay. It's a very similar pain. You're uprooting and destroying a big part of your life. And there's also loneliness involved. Huge loneliness. Again, even if the relationship has been rocky, if there's been up and down, like even if they cheated, you kind of miss having the body in the bed next to you at night, so to speak. You get used to having the presence and the comfort of that person, and it not having them creates this pervasive loneliness, especially when you realize that maybe it's not as easy to rebound or bounce back with someone else as you may have thought. And depending on the sort of life you've put together, you can find that there's a major social disruption, right? You guys might have the same friends. You've built up these really long-lasting couples friends over the years, or these family friendships. And all of a sudden, when this divorce happens, divides happen. And people can feel pressured to choose to pick a side. Even if you don't try to make them feel that way, it can very much feel that way. And people have biases. They've got opinions and they've got their beliefs and their way of thinking. So you can find that if you choose to walk away from your partner in your relationship, there can be a huge social disruption. So that's not to say you shouldn't do it if it's right for you, but it is a cost that you have to consider in the entire process. And it's one that not a lot of people really think about. There are also so many explosive financial battles and challenges that are involved with this. Again, you go back to that metaphor of the entwined branches on the trees. Some of these are financial, okay? You've got shared assets. You might have, you're on the same health insurance. Maybe your spouse has done the majority of the work for 20 or 30 years and you're on their health insurance. There's a lot that goes into breaking it up financially in these divorces. And it's so complex that you have to have mediation. You've got to have lawyers. You have to consider the fact that walking away from your partner after so long together, you could be losing 50% of your wealth. 50%. And that's an actual statistic from a late stage divorce attorney, who I will link down below as well. But there's a 50% drop in your wealth. Okay, because you're going to split stuff. If you've been together for decades, there's going to be a split. So you have to consider the financial battles that are going to come as a result of walking away from a long-term relationship. Perhaps the biggest side effect for you to consider, though, the biggest consequence, which is not always considered, is the fractured family. The fractured family. There are people who walk away from their relationships late, who think that the kids are grown up, they have their own relationships, they have their families, they have a house, we got them through college, that's it, we can do what we want, it's not going to hurt them. Incorrect, okay? In any divorce, the family is the silent victim. So your adult children will suffer, okay? They're going to suffer emotionally, they're going to watch the two of you, it's going to change their beliefs about themselves, about their own relationship. So you have to consider how you proceed with your family. You have to be honest, but you have to be gentle with them as well and know that they are emotionally going to be challenged by your divorce. So what happens, right? What do we do if we find that we're facing a divorce? Okay, a complete detonation of a partnership we've spent literally decades building. What happens when we find ourselves standing in the middle of it? Whether we're the person who chooses to do it, or more, probably factually, according to my readers and my listeners, you're the person on the receiving end. You're the person who just found out that your partner, the person you thought you were going to spend forever with, right off into the sunset with, is calling it quits. What happens? How do you navigate the fallout of this gray divorce? First and foremost, you have to give yourself space to rest and to process, right? If you're going through that, then you just need to, you're you're here. Okay. You're here. You've been blindsided. You've just been told that your partner of 20 or 30 years wants to end things. They want to explore new horizons or, whatever, but they don't want you in it. Okay. You're going to be broken. You're going to be devastated. You're going to be confused. You're going to be scared. You're going to be anxious. Your brain is just going to be an absolute puddle. You're going to be a puddle physically and emotionally. The only sensible thing that you can do is to give yourself time to go through grief. You need to rest, you need to relax, and you need to process everything that's gone on. And that's just a matter of time, really, more than anything. It's got to be like mindful, intentional time and space. The Great Divorce is exhausting. It takes everything out of you mentally, emotionally, physically. So you need to give yourself a window of time to just get person to person with yourself. You've got to grieve in this space. If you need to lie in bed, take a solo trip, get time off of work, spend time with your grandkids. Spend that time getting counseling from a professional, a therapist, a counselor, a coach, whatever feels comfortable for you. Rant with your friends, lean into the family that's supporting you. There's no right or wrong way, but you need to just not have any expectations. You need to not be trying to force anything, work through anything. You certainly don't need to be rebounding. You need to give yourself time and space. And then little by little, you'll be able to give yourself a little less time and a little less space. And then one day you'll wake up and you'll feel a little bit more like yourself than you did since the start of this thing. And that is when the ball starts rolling. When you've had enough time to kind of process and you feel comfortable enough, calm enough, emotionally calm enough, and physically strong enough, you can start to ask yourself some big questions. Okay. This is, again, you don't need to take action. Really, you need to give your brain time to warm up. Okay. Your brain is going to be the muscle behind your recovery from this. So you need to give it time to kind of wind up, recharge itself, and recenter. And you can do that by, asking yourself some questions. It should be things like, questions that help you revisualize your future. What do you really want from your life now? What does this ideal self maybe look like moving forward? What are some steps when you're ready that you could maybe take to become this person? Okay, you've got to question future relationships, question your intentions, question how you want to feel. Journaling is a great, safe way to kind of do this. You can explore questions like, what does a happy future look like to me now? And yes, you have to make yourself think of one, okay? Because you're going to be here. You're going to be here. This has not killed you. So you're once you've gotten to a place of emotional calm and you've been able to kind of revisualize what a happy tomorrow or just even a happy afternoon might look like, then you can start to take steps. You can start to rebuild an interesting life for yourself. You have to reconnect, re-engage with your passion little by little. And yes, it still exists, even if someone has ripped your heart. You've got to adventure and live in all the ways your pain has not allowed you to. This is the moment. So create a bucket list and use it as the motivation that you need to keep pushing forward. You surround yourself with people that you love. Go on a big trip. Do something exciting, do something you never thought that you would do, meet new people, invest in some fascinating experiences. You've got this entirely new horizon that you can paint for yourself. So you should do it. Okay. You are the only person who determines the course of your life now. You don't have to answer to anyone. So just stretch the limit of your imagination and make it fun. Make this new exploration fun. And that will make easing yourself back into it that much easier. A big one that I have to reiterate to a lot of my clients is to, don't only pay attention to your mental and emotional. When we get on these paths to personal development and self-healing, we can kind of just only focus on the mind and it doesn't matter about the body, but that's just not true. Okay. The mind and the body are connected. If one is ill, the other will suffer. So you need to also make sure you're nurturing your physical body and your physical self. You need to have a self-care routine. You need to make sure you're getting the food that you need, the outdoor time that you need. I'm not saying you have to start doing kickboxing or, you got to go hire Billy Mays and do Tai Bo all afternoon. That's just not even realistic for most people. Okay. Just make sure you're de-stressing, you're decompressing, you're allowing your batteries to recharge, you're putting your feet up, binging something on TV. Just make sure you're nourishing your physical body and your physical health. If you need to see a doctor, you're doing that. You're taking medication. Take care of that physical body as much as you're kind of nourishing and cradling that emotional body, because it's going to take as many hits along the way. Above and beyond anything else, though, it's just important that you're compassionate and that you don't rush the journey. I can't really give you a step-by-step instruction guide on getting better, because for every person in the fallout, they experience it differently. They get hit by different waves of grief at different times, and that affects their behavior, their beliefs, their kind of mental resilience. It affects everyone differently. Okay. All I can really do is give you specific tools for specific symptoms that you're feeling. But one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself throughout any process like this is compassion. Let yourself be sad. Let yourself be angry. Know that you're going to think of that person. You might slip up. You might call them. You might think about going back. You might try to go back and it blows up in your face. A lot of weird, crazy, bad things happen. Okay? That might be your journey. That might just be your journey. And you need to accept that, and you need to accept yourself and just be kind to yourself. And if nothing else, see the mistakes as an opportunity to reaffirm this new future. If you backslide and then you remember how terrible it was, well, that's a reminder of how good the future can be, right? That's a reminder from the universe to tell you this is not what you want. Keep going. And that's how you need to choose to see things. And that is gray divorce in a nutshell. Really complex topic, right? This trend, it's on a steep incline. So this is a reality that we have to face. And like any problem we face in life, when we face it with reality, we are far more successful and far more effective at dealing with it, getting past it, and getting ourselves back to a stable and happy place. A lot of things are changing in our society, and with those changes, they come changes in our kind of quote unquote institutions, like marriage. Forever doesn't mean forever anymore. Forever could mean 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, and then someone new. So we have to be really realistic about this trend and embrace it in a way, embrace the fact that we are, celebrating our autonomy, and we are being more accountable for our own personal happiness, and we're being more honest about our needs in and out of relationships. But it's important that we are very realistic about gray divorce, what it costs us financially, what it costs us emotionally, and the damage that it can cause to our social groups and to our families. It's not something to take lightly. It's not something to be leapt into lightly. When you have built a life with someone and you've really intertwined those lives, separating them is no small feat. So when we're honest with ourselves, if it is the right decision, we can take that leap. And if you're the person on the other end of it, it's important that you give yourself time to process that shock and revisualize a happy future for yourself. Gray divorce is on the rise, but that doesn't mean that we should lose hope for our relationships. If nothing else, it should make us hopeful that more people are realizing the value of their happiness and that they are creating happier environments for themselves with mindfulness and with intention. And that's to be celebrated. That's to be celebrated in every relationship. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me this week. You will have to excuse the snores from my little dog Percy, who is making a nice little guest appearance in the background there. But seriously, thank you so much for coming along this week and talking with me about gray divorce and the complex ins and outs. I appreciate your support here and on Medium. to show my kind of gratitude and my thanks and to celebrate the launch of the podcast, I'm currently giving away a free copy of my Chasing Pain ebook. All you have to do is head over to Apple Podcasts, leave a quick 5-star review, take a screenshot of that, and send it over to me. Once I have it, I'll get your email address and I'll send it right over to you. It's really that easy. So if you would like a free copy of Chasing Pain, make sure you leave a 5-star review. If you are ready to make some serious change in your life, then remember, final applications are open for my 8-week private coaching program. You've got about 90 days left to make some serious change in this year, okay? 2022 doesn't have to feel like this one did. So build a better relationship with yourself, learn how to communicate with your brain, communicate with others, and build the relationships you've been dreaming of in my 8-week private one-on-one coaching program. If you would like to check that out, head over to therealebjohnson.com and you can find all the information there. Again, thank you so much for supporting. If you'd like to read more of my content, head over to medium.com. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great weekend.